I've known you a number of years in a number of different incarnations. As well as leading schools in your own right, you've also done quite a lot of interim management. Could you tell us what you've been doing recently?
My bread and butter work is as a school improvement partner. So combining those two roles as a freelance consultant and interim leader is probably the mainstay of my work as an independent consultant for the last 6 or 7 years.
Okay. If I was to give you the contract tomorrow for writing a handbook about interim management, what do you think would rate amongst your top do's and don'ts?
In terms of do's, I think the overriding one is know thy school. Know the school that you're working at. You'll probably get, as an interim, very short lead-in time, so you need to gather as much information you can about the school, Ofsted reports, data, which is obviously now more readily available than what it was when I first started doing interim work, and you gather as many different views about where the school is now. And you nearly always have to listen to where the school was, because these schools that I go into are usually in a period of change or turbulence. The second thing is listen to people when you're there. They need to feel reassured by your presence, because obviously, as I say, the work that I do, it's usually a change that people are less than happy with. Even if the previous head was very successful and moving on, if I'm doing a term or 2 terms while they're appointing another head, they want to know why there's that discontinuity and so on. So you have to reassure people, staff, parents, governors sometimes, and also pupils. In terms of don'ts, I think the big one is don't assume that what you did last time is going to work this time. I think that's a big mistake, because each case and each school, although the process of how you work with the school may be similar, what you're trying to achieve may in fact vary quite considerably. So they're the 3 I think that I work with, 2 do's and 1 don't.
When schools go through change, when there's an interim around, and as you say, sometimes it's associated with failure, maybe a school's been put in measures of some kind. What are the kinds of things that go on in the school? You say people might not always be feeling at their best. What sort of situations do you encounter?
Usually, if it's a school that, as you just mentioned, gone into special measures or notice to improve, or there's some unknown reason why the head is moving on, there's that mystery, and we have to break through the mystery. And we have to actually try to work with the staff and the pupils to regain the school's vision and what they want to do. And that's both in the short and the long term, because they know I'm interim, they know I'm a short stay. So what am I going to bring to that school in that short period of time that they wouldn't get if I wasn't there? So again, that's about working with them, listening to them, finding out about the school, what its ambition is from that stakeholder point of view, and drawing that together, and hopefully, and most times it works out pretty well. You can gather a strapline or a statement that people can hang or hook their ideology on and work with that. In terms of some people, they'll sit there and say, oh well, you know, we don't have to do anything for a term or 2 terms, we'll wait till the new head comes along. And that's why it's important to work with the staff, so that the changes that go on, 99 times out of 100, if not 100 times out of 100, you'd want them to be driven by the staff, and you facilitate those changes and you make them happen, and you know when to intervene, and you know when to prompt, and you know when to challenge. So it's about developing that self-momentum within the school to do what they say they've always wanted to do, and allowing that to happen. My job really is to make sure that failure doesn't occur, because that just compounds the issue, and that people feel as though they are playing a positive part in the school moving forward, and to offer the reassurance that that will feed into the new leadership when that post is filled.
Over the last 5 or 10 years, we've learned, or at least we think we've learned, quite a lot about school leadership and turning schools around. So phrases like distributed leadership, effective use of data, remorseless focus on teaching and learning, all spring to mind. What have you learned about school leadership over the last 5 or 10 years?
The thing I've learnt about leadership over the years I've been doing it is that you've got to be confident in your own knowledge, insofar that it is partial. You can't know everything. You can't be the leader that everybody seems to think is going to have all the answers, because the school itself and the people in the school usually have the answers. You're the one who asks the right questions. And so if there's one thing I've learnt about leadership, it's about finding out about the school and being able to ask the right questions. Not necessarily at the right time, but ask them in the right sequence, so that you get the answers that you need to move that school forward. and you'll find out the typical people who will be reluctant, they'll wait and see. The people who are very forward and will say, oh yeah, you know, we've all wanted this for a long time. But it's not what they say and how it's not what they say originally and how they behave it's originally. It's how you interpret that and you move that forward, and how they can then play a part in the school going forward. And some people, as I say, it doesn't matter. You have to work out very quickly who's going to move it forward with you, and therefore increase your knowledge and your understanding of the school and the motivation. And those who are going to sit there saying, well, I think it's a good idea, but you know, it's not. I don't have to play a part in that. That's not my job. And that's one of the biggest things that you can hit at times of change. It's not in my job description, or I've never had to do it before. Some people will grasp the opportunity, other people will just want to sit on their hands and wait for something to happen around them, because that's what they expect leaders to do.
How similar are the processes involved when you're working as a school improvement partner?
The difference is, of course, as a head, you work with the governing body more directly to make decisions, and they work on recommendations, and you have far more operational involvement in terms of how things happen in the school. So, of course, a good leader monitors and evaluates the work that's been agreed, the change agenda. Is it being enacted? Are people just talking it, or are they actually walking it? As a school improvement partner, that's slightly different. You have to ask the questions, and then you have to rely on other types of feedback to assess the impact that you're having. Because the school improvement partner at the moment, unless they're in national challenge or gaining ground, will have a maximum of 5 visits a year. Well, as an interim head, I'm there probably 5 days a week, so the impact is considerably different. As an interim leader in a school, then you're there. You've got to make it happen. You've got to work with people to be effective, and you know more immediately what needs to change and what doesn't.
One of the things I do notice, though, despite all the improvements we've made, is that the tale of underachievement in schools seems to remain pretty static, doesn't it? It's not just a thing I've noticed, it's kind of nationally known fact. If I asked you to put your thinking cap on, what do we need to do more? What aren't we doing in schools?
I think underachievement is still quite profound in many schools. But at the end of the day, I've got to come back to you, I think, John, that the quality of a school and the impact it has on its pupils is driven by the teachers and their presence in that school, what presence they bring. Do they come and do they just go in a classroom, or do they come and do they teach? Do they develop relationships with those pupils? Do they make it happen for the kids? Do they bring it alive? Or is it just something that happens for 45 minutes or an hour block? While we have a large amount of pressure on these teachers to perform without providing continuous professional development in a way that's meaningful, not just 5 baker days so they can tidy their desk, then I think that challenge of underachievement is going to remain with us. So for me, it would be about definitely looking at CPT for teachers, making sure that they're supported, coached, mentored while they're in the classroom, and obviously we're seeing a greater use of pupils in their own learning, the independence learning. Then that has to be brought through as well.
If I appointed you National Curriculum Czar tomorrow, what would you be doing?
I think that I would want teachers again to have the opportunity to do like I did, and possibly yourself, which is write curriculum. Teachers, I think, are too busy nowadays actually delivering curriculum as opposed to writing it for their children and making sure it fits those particular needs. People watching this who are old as I may remember CSE Mode 3 and things like this, but they were good courses. They enabled kids to move from where they were to where they needed to be.